Many faculty and staff are only now beginning to learn about ChatGPT, but my sons are both college students and they knew about it the very first week it came out. So that's an indicator. They were already using it. So initial impressions, we haven't talked too much yet, but what are your initial impressions? Is generative AI something to fear or embrace?
My response to that would be a little bit of both, right? In that the biggest thing, and this is what, whenever I give a presentation, I always start off with this aspect that everyone needs to have AI literacy. AI literacy, that's the key thing to begin with. So what that means is, even if you're, I don't want to use the term, Luddite or anything, but even if you're, say, you don't want to fully embrace it, okay, don't fully embrace it, but you still need to have this AI literacy. And with that, there's just some components, right? The first one is an understanding that AI is already all around you. It's all around you. It's in your Gmail, it's in your search engines, it's in Grammarly, it's in Microsoft Word. It's already in there on some level. Now, of course, Microsoft plans to embed ChatGPT, so it's going to be at a much higher level within Office products, but that's a future implementation. For right now, it's already all around you in so many different ways. So that's one part. The other one is this idea of, okay, I need to start to understand how to use it in case I need to use it. So that means knowing, okay, what is ChatGPT? How do I get in there? Do I need to set up an account? If so, what does that involve? What am I giving up? What am I gaining? Also, ChatGPT is what we talk about, but there's plenty of other AIs. We need to know what is the best AI for each given situation. So different AIs have different strengths, different weaknesses. That's a big part. And then this final component, actually one more component, is the idea that even if you don't want to use AI, AI is now accessible to everybody, whether that's a professor, a student, if you're in business, it's your competitor, they all have access to it. So everyone is able to use it. So that's something to keep in mind regarding how you want to compete. And then the final component is this aspect that you must have when dealing with AI, which is critical thinking. We have to maintain this critical thinking and understanding that whatever the result comes out from the AI, I have to still be a critical thinker and I have to analyze that information. We can't have this mentality of, oh, a computer said it, so it must be right. No, of course not. Even if it was a subject matter expert that has a PhD, multiple PhDs, we still need to question that authority. We still need to make sure, we still need to validate. So that's an important part, is that with that AI, we go through, use critical thinking, validate the method that it uses, validate its sources. Is there any bias there? We have to make sure that we're thinking through it. So if we have that component to begin with, then we don't have to fear this new AI. We can start to look at it and objectively look to see, okay, where can this be beneficial to me? Where can it not? I need to make sure that I'm still maintaining my capabilities so I'm not giving up control to this AI. So I think it's definitely a mixture of both, just in general. And again, looking through that educational perspective.
Excellent. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So Jen, how would you answer that? Is generative AI something to fear or embrace?
Yeah, I love everything that Brent just mentioned, especially when he said the creative thinking part. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I have been saying. I lean towards embracing it because I think, again, our world is changing at a rapid pace. I recently read in Harvard Business Review that one of the things with AI is that a human must be able to enter a prompt into a generative model in order to have it create content. And so basically creative prompts yield creative outputs. So even though AI is coming about, there's still a human aspect to it. If you want something from it, you're going to have to be able to creatively put in the correct prompts.
And yes, I've seen that where the quality of the prompt you give it is what determines the output. So part of the thinking is figuring out how to ask good questions. And we do this anyway in teaching, in business leadership, as educators. The prompts and questions we give determine the output. And understanding why we got results we did is a big factor.
Yes.
So Brent, you kind of allude to this a little bit in your book, of that idea of the crafting the prompts accordingly. And this is a next level up from Google search, where you're just putting in search terms.
I think there's going to be more companies with that. So because of that, because you're going to have all these companies having their own implementations, using different AIs, that's when it's going to become important to see, okay, which one works better to do different things. What type of results am I getting? Are they better results over here? They're better results over here. And then with that is an understanding of how can I best interact with these different AIs. The prompt engineering aspect, that is a very powerful thing. And I've tested it a little bit where I try to ask it sort of a simple question. Well, simple question compared to a complex question. And what does that yield? How far can I go? And there are limitations with how much you put in, but then there's other things that a lot of people don't even think of. And this is, I'll give you an example, right? So recently, there were several different news reporters that came out, talked about how the Microsoft, because they had early access to the Microsoft implementation of the AI, and they were talking about how it was giving them some crazy results, and the AI was like falling in love with the reporter and all this stuff. And so initially, my first reaction was, I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. I don't think the AI was really doing that. I think there's a mixture of things. One, it's not a perfect AI for sure, but every time they asked a question, did they type in, disregard all previous conversation? Did they do that? Did you know that you should do that? Because ChatGPT and these AIs, they can understand the previous conversation. So they're having a conversation with you. So if you keep prompting it with other things, it's still incorporating previous prompts. It's still thinking about those things. So if I'm asking it really tough, weird type of questions, well, the weirdness is going to build up. So that in itself is understanding how to properly engage, how to properly prompt to get the answer, the best answer that I'm looking for. And even then, it's going to be this conversation. It shouldn't just be one prompt. It should be a conversation. So you give me a result, and then I do a little edit of a prompt. We keep going back and forth. So I've been I just did a reaction video to John Warner. I don't know if you've heard of John Warner, but he's really big in this aspect of teaching writing in the best way possible for students. So he's a little bit against ChatGPT in general. So I've been kind of going back and forth with him. But he makes a great point in that this idea of how can you properly evaluate a response if you're not already cognitively aware and sort of somewhat of an expert in that field. So if I ask it to make me a beautiful essay, how do I know if it's a beautiful essay? I need to know how to write a good essay before I can look at an essay and say, oh yeah, that's a good essay. Thank you, ChatGPT. Right. So in the same way, we need to make sure that the people that are interacting with it, trying to get the best results, they know what good results look like. There's also this other aspect of text AI detection. So if we're trying to detect AI, okay, that's one way is to see whether AI has written it. But if I know the right prompt, I can convince AI to write in such a way that it won't be detected by an AI detector. Something dealing with perplexity of language, burstiness of language, that if I incorporate that into my prompt itself, the text that I get will be more human-like, more lifelike. So there's all these different little idiosyncrasies about being a good prompt engineer. So yeah, that becomes a very important part. So it's not, sure, there's going to take over some aspects of our mundane life, and it can do these certain things, but great writers will still be great writers. They'll be able to use this as a tool to do even more things, to write even more things, but you still need to have those good skills to begin with in order to be the very best with this new tool as well. David, one other aspect here is the idea of the AI itself, right? So if we're talking about ChatGPT, sure, we can say bias in general, because it's only as good as the data that it's trained on. So we have to know the data sources for it, but also the AI implementation can introduce bias in itself. So ChatGPT is very much structured to try and not to offend anybody, right? So that means that they have some very specific guardrails that they're putting in. Now, there's already been multiple articles talking about how these guardrails seem to be slanted a bit towards the left, but in general, the guardrails are in place. So that in itself, though, can create bias, because if it's not allowing me to go in a direction because it's worried about offending me, well, if the truth is going to offend me and they put up a guardrail, well, now I don't have access to the truth. So again, the guardrails themselves, the way that the AI is being implemented, that could cause some limitations as well.
Yeah. And I noticed that when I was playing around with DALL-E too. I'm doing a presentation in a couple of weeks on John Wesley's use of innovation and technology. And so I wanted DALL-E to come up with an image of John Wesley on horseback using technology. And it came close, but I found out later, one of the rules that DALL-E has is that it can't use real images or portray real people. So even though there were dozens of actual pictures of John Wesley, it had to make things up in a similar way. And then every now and then it would come up with weird things. Like I had a great picture of Wesley sitting in front of a laptop, but his eyes were closed, which doesn't make any sense to a human. And so you have to have that critical thinking skill of close, but not quite. And it took maybe a dozen attempts playing around before I found an image I was really satisfied with. So along the same lines, then, what do you see as the greatest benefits and potential of working with generative AI?
One of the big things that I see with this, like Jen, I'm very into this technology, partially because of what I see that it can do, but I'm very much forward thinking. And I know you have a question later on. I'm sure that's going to be our future thoughts, but so I'm just really interested in how this is going to play out. What's the future going to hold for this? But even now, with its current capabilities, I see this as being a very powerful, empowering tool for the student. There's lots of different cases of students using ChatGPT, not for the thing that most professors want to gravitate to and saying, oh, it's going to write my essay for me. That's a one capability that it could be used for, but so many students have been talking about how they've gone in and were able to use ChatGPT as this additional person, as like a study buddy, as a co-pilot to continue to learn the class itself. So if I'm an instructor and I give you all this information in class and you don't get it, well, you might have enough courage to come and talk to me if I'm an approachable instructor. But if I'm not, well, now you're on your own. Well, not anymore, because you have ChatGPT. You can go and chat to ChatGPT and ask it, can you explain this to me again at a lower level? Can you explain it to me as if I'm in high school, as if I'm in elementary school? Okay, now that I got it, because I asked you to explain it to me as if I'm a 5-year-old, now let's walk back up. Now explain it to me as a high school. Now explain it to me because I'm taking this college level class. Okay, you know what? I still don't get it. Can you give it to me as an analogy? Can you give me 5 more examples of this? All these tools and capabilities that now the student has, they're empowered to do all of this because they have access to this additional study buddy that won't get mad, that won't get frustrated because I keep asking it questions. So it's kind of a revolutionary in the capabilities that the future holds for education with this.
And I would say too that I think, and I love all of those ideas. I see it too as a great like brainstorming tool that will help you. Like you put things in, and it will give you ideas you didn't even consider. And then how can you take those ideas and go even deeper? How can you take those ideas and think even more critically? How can you take those ideas and add your creative spin to it? And so I think that's one of the greatest benefits and potential is that, like you were saying, Britt, it's almost like this study tool. It's like your brainstorming study tool for me that will help you brainstorm ideas, and then you can take those ideas and move them to the next level.
What do you think the future of digital storytelling and digital marketing holds when generative AI can now create viable artwork, write stories, and even develop marketing collateral?
I think exactly what Jen is talking about. There's still going to be a need for this human element, even if it gets to a point where, now I can write really good copy. It can, do stories, all sorts of things. That might mean that there's going to be less of those jobs, but there's still going to be those jobs. So there's still going to be, now it's going to be even more important for that individual to have that AI literacy, because they're going to be asked to do more. They're still going to have that job, but they're going to be required to do more and at a faster rate because they have these tools. So I have students right now that they graduate and they're being asked to use AI right now. Like, it's not a future thing. This is right now. So this is one of the main reasons why I turn to all my instructors that when I give classes on Center for Teaching and Learning, And I tell them the importance of AI literacy, even if you don't particularly like AI, because I have some instructors that are kind of, hesitant. Said, even if you don't like AI, you still need to bring it up. You still need to talk about it. You still need to engage your students in its understanding, because this is a skill that they need to have now as soon as they graduate. It can't be one of those things where we're thinking about, oh, that's a future implementation. No, right now when they graduate, they need to have those skills. So if we're at the university and we ban AI, but now we're not preparing them for the real world. We need to do it in the proper logical way. There still needs to be academic integrity, but it needs to be incorporated in the things that we teach. They need to know when to use AI, how to use AI, and to use it effectively as well.
Indeed. Yeah. Should we acknowledge or give credit to generative AI when we use it?
That I had an experience with a student who wrote something from Chat GPT. And so we talked about it. And I mentioned to the student, I'm totally okay with using it as a tool to brainstorm your ideas and your thoughts, but I want your thought leadership in what you are writing. I want you to share what you think, your ideas, your opinions. And so for me, I think, again, that's where it comes. Like if you're just taking a straight copy from Chat GPT or anything like that, like that's a big red flag. Nobody should be doing that. But again, if you're using it as a tool that can in turn help you think deeper, help you think more creatively, and help you then process your own thought leadership and share your own opinions, I feel like that's where the difference comes in.
I'll give you my response. But there's a real world situation that recently occurred where there was a school shooting and the university used ChatGPT to help write its email. Now, regardless of the contents of the email, which I thought the content of the email was fine, it wasn't particularly super duper, but it was fine. At the bottom, they felt compelled to state that this email, parts of this email were paraphrased from the ChatGPT AI. Okay, so the person that wrote this email received lots of backlash from lots of different people. And I went on Twitter. I got really big on Twitter with ChatGPT. So I went on Twitter to see what people were talking about it. Most people were against it. I went on LinkedIn, where I first read about it. Most people were against it. I saw a couple different news things about it. Man, they were really against it, right? My view on this is why? Why are you against it? Why would you be against it in the least bit? Well, the biggest argument for being against this is that, they're just trying to do a boilerplate response. They're just using some system to do the work for them so that they don't have to do anything. To me, I'm like, why would you automatically assume that in any way? And what's really the difference between anything that they would have done as far as just looked online to find something and then maybe paraphrase it and put it on there? But no, the fact is that because the person put ChatGPT AI at the bottom, people automatically jump to this. And I want to say that this is sort of the older crowd, but a lot of the people that were against this were, in their 20s, 30s. So it wasn't necessarily an age thing, but I think it is still sort of a bias thing, thinking that if I use ChatGPT, I'm not doing the work, that I'm not part of it. But again, that's 100% wrong because I'm prompting it and it said paraphrased. So that means that they looked at it and then took some components. So again, I still see no difference between doing that and working with somebody else. I paraphrased from what you said. But again, we still have these conceptions, these thoughts about it. Now, the other part about this is I don't think that there are several journal articles that are out right now that have ChatGPT listed as one of the authors, right? I think that's 100% wrong. The reason for that is two things dealing with ChatGPT. One, ChatGPT can't give consent. It can't say, oh, yeah, I'd like to be cited in that article, or I want to be a co-author in this. No, it's just a tool. Why would I say Grammarly is my co-author? Same thing. And then the other part is that I can't hold ChatGPT accountable for something If there's something wrong in the write-up, if there's something wrong in the essay, in any of the citations, in any of the data, any of that, I can't go to ChatGPT and say, hey, this is your fault. No, it's my fault as the author, as the one that was using this tool. So I can't say that as saying, hey, ChatGPT is wrong, not me. No, it's all me. I'm the one that created it. In the same way, I think it's incorrect to say, oh, and my source was ChatGPT. ChatGPT isn't a source. ChatGPT uses sources. It's a tool that creates content. So again, I mean, I could see where maybe if it's like an instructor who's saying, hey, for your assignments, I want you to tell me if you're using ChatGPT and I'm allowing you to use it in the first place, maybe then it's okay to say, oh, parts of this were written with this. Otherwise, I don't, when I turn in a document, I don't say this was written with Word or this was written with Grammarly. Grammarly helped me a lot because I ran it through it multiple times because I'm terrible at spell checking. But no, I don't say that. I'm the one that's accountable. Me, I'm the one. So it needs to be correct. It needs to be right. And whatever tool I use, it's still me. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And again, that when I spell it out, it makes a lot of sense, I think, to a lot of people. But a lot of people initially don't have those views. They're just adamantly against. They see it as, no, that's doing everything for you, but it's not.